Welcome to InfoStream, your daily current. Unsure what to listen to? Turn to us for today's headlines. Stay informed. Global trade faces ongoing disruptions. Trump and Putin scheduled to meet soon. U.S. soldier accused of espionage. Ukraine war efforts uncertain. Israel plans for future Gaza conflict. Palestine Action supporters charged. Death penalty sought in museum shooting. Gaza aid crisis worsens due to violence. Hezbollah opposes Lebanon's arms deal. Stanford Lawsuit challenges deportation policy. UK interest rates impact mortgages and savings. UK secures return deal with France. UK addresses Chinese investment in steel issues. Global net zero efforts continue. Rent hike prompts resignation calls. Global trade disruptions, a summary of recent economic developments. Recent economic developments are characterized by escalating trade tensions and their ripple effects across multiple industries. A significant factor is the continued surge in Chinese steel exports, posing considerable challenges for steelmakers globally, including Tata Steel's Thailand. During the first half of 2025, Chinese wire rod steel imports into Thailand rose dramatically by 57% to 535,000 tons, contributing to a total of 781,000 tons of imports. This influx is driven by China's substantial steel production capacity and growing global demand. Simultaneously, global trade disputes, primarily fueled by U.S. President Donald Trump's reciprocal tariffs, are intensifying. The doubling of tariffs on steel and aluminum imports from 25% to 50% has created significant disruption. Furthermore, a 19% tariff on other Thai imports raises concerns about indirect impacts on the steel industry. While Tata Steel, Thailand, isn't directly affected by the steel tariff, the overall trade environment demands constant monitoring. Thai steel consumption is projected at 16 million tons for 2025, mirroring 2024 levels, supported by infrastructure investments. Tata Steel Thailand reported a 9.3% increase in sales for Q1 2026, driven by a 12.6% rise in domestic sales and a 5.45% decrease in exports. Revenue increased by 0.04% to 6.83 billion baht, and profit soared by 4.10% to 474 million baht, thanks to cost reduction strategies. The Thai Federation of Industries has urged the government to manage steel supply effectively, given the increasing import pressures. The ongoing Thai-Cambodia territorial dispute has had a limited impact on Tata Steel's Thailand's operations, as exports to Cambodia have declined significantly over the past 1.5 years. The overall economic landscape remains volatile, requiring proactive adaptation from businesses and governments alike to mitigate potential risks and capitalize on emerging opportunities. These trade tensions highlight the interconnectedness of the global economy and the importance of strategic trade policies. Trump-Putin meeting agreed for coming days, venue set Kremlin, following a meeting between U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff and Vladimir Putin in Moscow. A summit between Presidents Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin has been scheduled for the coming days, with a venue agreed in principle. This marks the first direct meeting between sitting U.S. and Russian presidents since Joe Biden's 2021 summit in Geneva. The announcement comes amid stalled negotiations regarding a ceasefire in Ukraine, with 3 rounds of talks in Istanbul failing to produce a resolution. Donald Trump has repeatedly stated his intention to meet with Putin very soon. The Kremlin confirmed the planned summit, stating that details are currently being finalized in collaboration with American colleagues, with next week tentatively targeted. Despite the impending meeting, significant divisions persist between the parties. Russia continues to demand Kyiv withdraw from territory it controls and renounce Western military support as preconditions for a ceasefire. Moscow has repeatedly questioned Zelensky's legitimacy and has refused to schedule a direct meeting until terms are agreed upon. Following Witkoff's visit, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has reiterated his call for a direct meeting with Putin, arguing it's the only effective way to achieve progress. Zelensky has been actively engaging with international leaders, including German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, to secure support and push for a resolution. The conflict has resulted in tens of thousands of casualties and has displaced millions of Ukrainians. The proposed summit underscores a potential shift in diplomatic strategy, though the underlying obstacles to a lasting peace remain substantial. The Kremlin continues to prioritize its military objectives in Ukraine, while the U.S. and its allies maintain pressure on Russia to end the aggression and return to negotiations with a genuine commitment to a ceasefire and a peaceful resolution. Both sides are preparing for a crucial meeting, with the outcome remaining uncertain. U.S. soldier charged with espionage leak of tank secrets to Russia. A U.S. Army soldier, Taylor Adam Lee, has been arrested and charged with attempting to share classified information about the U.S. Army's M1A2 Abrams tank with Russia, marking a significant national security concern. The Justice Department alleges Lee, an active duty soldier stationed at Fort Bliss in Texas with a top secret security clearance, sought to exchange classified information for Russian citizenship. Prosecutors claim Lee engaged in online communications expressing his intent to expose U.S. tank weaknesses and offered assistance to the Russian Federation. Specifically, Lee attempted to provide sensitive tank vulnerability data to a person he believed to be a Russian intelligence officer in July, and subsequently delivered a piece of tank hardware to a storage unit in El Paso, Texas, accompanied by a message stating mission accomplished. The information he provided could have been strategically valuable to Russia, particularly given the U.S. has supplied Abrams tanks to Ukraine. The charges against Lee include violating the Espionage Act, attempting to export controlled technical data without a license, and a violation of the Arms Export Control Act. He was apprehended following an investigation by Army Counterintelligence Command and the FBI's Counterintelligence Division. Roman Rosavsky, Assistant Director of the FBI's Counterintelligence Division, emphasized that Lee's actions constitute a betrayal of the U.S. and represent a serious threat to national security. Brigadier General Sean F. Stinchon, Commanding General of Army Counterintelligence Command, echoed this sentiment, stating the arrest serves as a message to anyone thinking about betraying the U.S. The investigation highlights the ongoing vigilance required to prevent insider threats within the military. The government has requested Lee's detention without bond. This case underscores the potential consequences of mishandling sensitive national defense information and reinforces the importance of maintaining strict security protocols within the armed forces. The FBI and Army Counterintelligence Command continue to investigate, with the aim of ensuring such breaches are swiftly detected and addressed. Trump's efforts to end Ukraine war face uncertainty. Recent developments surrounding Donald Trump's attempts to mediate an end to the Ukraine war reveal a complex and potentially precarious situation. Despite Trump's optimistic pronouncements regarding great progress, the prospects for a swift resolution remain uncertain, largely due to Russia's continued military actions and a perceived lack of genuine commitment to a ceasefire. The core of the issue lies in Russia's ongoing summer offensive, which has intensified attacks on Ukrainian cities, challenging the feasibility of immediate negotiations. Furthermore, Russia's strategic goals, as perceived by analysts, extend beyond a simple cessation of hostilities, potentially encompassing the retention of seized territories and the exclusion of Ukraine from NATO membership. Trump's efforts, facilitated by envoy Steve Witkoff, have involved preliminary talks with President Vladimir Putin. While Trump has expressed confidence in a potential summit within weeks, the Kremlin's motives remain opaque. Critics express skepticism, citing past instances of Putin manipulating Trump's diplomatic efforts and the potential for Russia to exploit the situation for strategic gain. The situation is further complicated by the divergent perspectives of key actors. Ukraine, wary of Russian deception, emphasizes the need for verifiable guarantees before engaging in negotiations. European allies also maintain a cautious approach, prioritizing continued support for Ukraine while seeking to prevent further escalation. Despite the challenges, Trump's engagement represents a significant development. The possibility of a summit, even if tentative, could provide a platform for direct communication and potentially influence the trajectory of the conflict. However, success hinges on Russia's willingness to compromise and the ability of the U.S. to navigate the complexities of the situation. Ultimately, the future of the Ukraine war remains heavily influenced by Russia's strategic calculations and the effectiveness of diplomatic efforts, with Trump's role presenting both a potential catalyst for resolution and a source of uncertainty. Israeli Security Cabinet to discuss future Gaza war plans. Israeli Security Cabinet meetings are underway and plan to discuss expanded military operations in Gaza, driven by concerns over the ongoing hostage situation and escalating humanitarian conditions. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu intends to pursue a complete takeover of Gaza, aiming to destroy Hamas and secure the release of the approximately 49 remaining hostages. This strategy involves potential ground operations, including targeting densely populated areas where hostages are believed to be held, and relocating residents southward. Disagreements exist between Netanyahu and the military chief, Lieutenant General Eyal Zamir, regarding the scope of these operations, with Zamir reportedly opposing a full occupation. International pressure is mounting due to the dire humanitarian crisis in Gaza, with UN agencies warning of imminent famine. The cabinet is considering expanding operations despite this backdrop. Families of the hostages have launched desperate attempts to reach Gaza, including a flotilla departing from Ashkelon, seeking to get as close as possible to their loved ones. Significant concerns exist regarding the potential for increased destruction and casualties. Residents, many of whom have been displaced, express fears about further devastation, particularly in refugee camps and densely populated areas. Ahmad Salem, a displaced resident from Jabalia, voiced his apprehension about the risks of expanded ground operations. The situation is complicated by logistical challenges, with inspection procedures at Gaza's entry points limiting the flow of humanitarian aid. Despite partial easing of restrictions, aid agencies report that only 70-80 trucks of specific goods are entering daily, far short of the estimated 600 trucks needed. Prices of food remain exorbitant, creating an unsustainable burden for displaced residents. At least 35 people have been killed in Gaza following airstrikes, further exacerbating the humanitarian crisis. International criticism remains high, highlighting the urgent need for increased aid and a resolution to the conflict. The ongoing disagreements within the Israeli Security Cabinet underscore the complexities of the situation and the challenges in achieving a sustainable and just outcome. 3 people charged with supporting Palestine Action, 2 men and a woman, have been charged following a protest in Westminster supporting Palestine Action, a group recently banned under terrorism laws. The charges, the first of their kind in England and Wales, stem from a July 5th demonstration and involve a total of 26 other individuals also under investigation. Commander Dominic Murphy stated that the Metropolitan Police intend to forward case files to the Crown Prosecution Service. Police are anticipating over 500 attendees at a planned Saturday demonstration in London's Parliament Square. The group, founded in 2020, gained notoriety after breaking into Rathbrise Norton in Oxfordshire, causing approximately $7 million in damage, and spraying 2 Voyager planes with red paint. The ban on Palestine Action was announced by Home Secretary Yvette Cooper following the Bryce Norton incident, citing the group's aggressive methods and significant damage caused. However, the ban has been met with widespread criticism, with 52 scholars, including Tariq Ali and Naomi Klein, launching a court bid to overturn it. The legal challenge argues the ban infringes on fundamental freedoms of expression and assembly. Several individuals have been arrested in connection with the protest, including 68-year-old Margie Mansfield, a retired banking consultant, who was deeply affected by the suffering in Gaza. Mansfield, along with 18-year-old history student Zahra Ali and 49-year-old obstetrician Alice Clark, were arrested and spent time in custody, expressing their outrage at the situation in Gaza, particularly the starvation of children. Clark, a former volunteer with Doctors Without Borders, expressed growing disgust at the images from Gaza and the government's perceived inaction. Ali, similarly, felt a responsibility to act against what she considered the government's wrongdoings. All 3 women, along with other arrested individuals, face potential prison sentences of up to 14 years. The arrests highlight the tensions surrounding freedom of protest and the government's response to perceived threats to national security. The legal proceedings and ongoing demonstrations underscore the complex political landscape surrounding the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the diverse perspectives within the UK on this issue. The case is expected to continue to generate public debate and scrutiny of the government's policies. The Capitol Jewish Museum shooting, death penalty pursuit intensifies. Federal prosecutors have secured an indictment against Elias Rodriguez, 31, in connection with the fatal shooting of Israeli embassy staff members Yaron Lishinsky and Sarah Lynn Milgram outside the Capitol Jewish Museum in Washington, D.C., on May 21. The indictment includes nearly 10 charges encompassing premeditated murder and hate crimes resulting in death, alongside legal findings authorizing the Justice Department to pursue the death penalty. This marks the Department of Justice's first attempt to seek capital punishment out of Washington, D.C. in several years. Rodriguez is accused of intentionally and with forethought killing Lishinsky and Milgram, deeming the manner in which Milgram attempted to flee as especially heinous, cruel, and depraved. Surveillance footage captured Rodriguez approaching the victims as they prepared to leave the event, where he then fired 20 shots, followed by additional shots as Milgram crawled away and as she sat up after reloading. Prosecutors allege Rodriguez's motivation stemmed from anti-Semitism, evidenced by numerous statements criticizing Israel and expressing support for violence against its citizens. These include a social media message advocating for the vaporization of all Israeli citizens over 18 and a document titled Explication, expressing support for Palestine and claiming Israel was trying to exterminate Palestinians. Rodriguez's statements to police after his arrest, stating "I did it for Palestine, I did it for Gaza," further solidify this claim. The investigation revealed Rodriguez's attendance at a networking event sponsored by the American Jewish Committee and the Capitol Jewish Museum. He purchased a ticket to the event and researched the museum prior to the shooting. The legal hurdle of proving Rodriguez's anti-Semitic motive remains a key challenge for prosecutors, requiring a higher evidentiary standard than that needed for an indictment. Convincing a jury of Rodriguez's intent is considered difficult. The Justice Department will now determine whether to pursue a death sentence, a feat that hasn't been accomplished in the district in many years. Gaza aid crisis escalates amidst violence and supply disruptions. A tragic incident in Gaza resulted in 20 deaths and over 30 injuries when 6 commercial trucks were looted and 4 overturned due to panicked crowds attempting to access supplies. The incident occurred in an area under Israeli military control, characterized by rugged and dangerous roads. The Hamas-run Civil Defense Agency reported that crowds overwhelmed the drivers, leading to the vehicles losing control. Israel announced a shift towards allowing private sector entry of goods into Gaza, aiming to increase aid volume and reduce reliance on the UN. Approved supplies include baby food, fruits, vegetables, hygiene products, and basic staples. However, the situation remains volatile, with ongoing accusations of obstruction and violence against aid convoys. A separate incident involved Jordanian settlers attacking a Gaza-bound aid convoy of 30 trucks, pelting them with stones and smashing windscreens. Jordan accused Israel of failing to prevent the attack, demanding intervention. The Hamas-run health ministry reported 5 additional deaths due to malnutrition, bringing the total to 193 since the beginning of the war, including 96 children. This alarming statistic reinforces concerns regarding mass starvation in Gaza, echoed by over 100 international aid organizations and human rights groups. Benjamin Netanyahu vehemently denies allegations of deliberate starvation, asserting that Israel is not blocking aid deliveries. Despite Israel's recent announcements of humanitarian corridors, local tactical pauses, and foreign aid drops, access remains sporadic, and looting continues to impede aid distribution. Approximately 90% of Gaza's 2.1 million people have been displaced, living in overcrowded and dire conditions. The UN repeatedly calls for the full and sustained entry of humanitarian supplies. Since Israel's military offensive in response to Hamas's attack on October 7, 2023, resulting in over 61,000 Palestinian deaths, the humanitarian crisis in Gaza continues to deepen, characterized by violence, supply disruptions, and growing concerns about the well-being of the population. Hezbollah rejects Lebanon's arms control initiative. Lebanon's Hezbollah has vehemently rejected the country's government's recently announced plans to establish a state monopoly on arms, branding the move a grave sin. The Iranian-backed group, having suffered significant degradation during last year's conflict with Israel, remains steadfast in its refusal to relinquish its arsenal, despite mounting international pressure and calls from domestic rivals. Hezbollah's response highlights the deep-seated tensions surrounding the group's weaponry and its role in Lebanese politics. The government's decision, spearheaded by Prime Minister Nawaf Salam, involves tasking the Lebanese army with controlling all arms, a move intended to address security concerns and reduce Hezbollah's military capabilities. However, Hezbollah views this as a direct consequence of American diktats and an attempt to undermine its strategic position. Adding to the complexity, the proposal comes in the wake of an American-presented roadmap offering Hezbollah disarmament in exchange for Israel's cessation of strikes and troop withdrawal from southern Lebanon. Hezbollah leader Naim Qassem stated the group would not engage in discussions regarding weapons while Israeli attacks persist, accusing Israel of violating the November ceasefire agreement. Israel maintains its actions are necessary to prevent Hezbollah's rearmament and regrouping. Hezbollah's strong support within Lebanon's Shia Muslim population further complicates the situation, as any attempts to disarm the group could significantly escalate tensions, echoing the memories of the devastating 1975-1990 civil war. The group remains open to dialogue on a broader national security strategy, but only if it doesn't involve aggression or attempts to curtail its military assets. The situation underscores the ongoing struggle for power and influence within Lebanon, with Hezbollah's stance representing a key obstacle to achieving lasting stability and security. Stanford Daily Lawsuit challenges ideological deportation policy. Stanford University student newspaper, the Stanford Daily, has filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration, alleging the use of federal immigration law to target and potentially deport pro-Palestinian students and staff. The lawsuit, filed in a California federal court, centers on 2 provisions within the Immigration and Nationality Act, INA, that have been central to the administration's ideological deportation policy. The core argument is that these provisions impermissibly infringe upon students' First Amendment rights to freedom of expression. The lawsuit highlights a concerning trend where the state and homeland security departments have been leveraging the INA to pursue individuals based on their political views, specifically those related to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Several similar legal challenges are underway across the country, seeking to determine the constitutionality of these INA provisions and the administration's application of them. The Stanford Daily's legal team, supported by the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, asserts that international students working on the newspaper have self-censored their work, particularly concerning coverage of the war in Gaza, due to fear of visa revocation, arrest, detention, or deportation. This self-censorship directly demonstrates the chilling effect of the administration's policy. The INA provisions at issue grant the Secretary of State the authority to deem a non-citizen removable if they personally determine their views compromise a compelling U.S. foreign policy interest, and the power to revoke a visa at any discretion. This has led to scrutiny and concern regarding the administration's overreach. The lawsuit seeks to prevent the administration from using these provisions to deport any non-citizen members of the newspaper staff based on their protected speech. The legal team emphasizes that the First Amendment protects individuals from being treated differently by the government simply because they hold dissenting views. This case follows a bench trial in Boston, where Trump administration officials testified about the targeting of pro-Palestinian students and scholars. Judge William Young is currently considering the evidence and the implications of the administration's actions, which potentially affect hundreds of non-citizens. The legal battle underscores the ongoing tension between immigration enforcement and freedom of expression on college campuses. UK interest rate cut impact on mortgages, savings, and the economy. The Bank of England has reduced its base interest rate from 4.25% to 4%, the lowest level since March 2023, marking the fifth cut since last August. This decision reflects the bank's assessment of a struggling UK economy and a weakening jobs market. The primary goal is to stimulate economic growth and address a widening spending gap. Lower interest rates are anticipated to reduce monthly mortgage repayments for some homeowners, with an average standard variable rate mortgage of $250,000 over 25 years potentially seeing a decrease of $40 per month, according to MoneyFacts. However, the cut presents a negative outcome for savers. Average savings rates are currently at 3.5%, a decrease of 0.4% year-on-year, and further reductions are expected, causing misery for savers, as stated by Rachel Springall. The combination of rising inflation and falling interest rates will diminish the real value of savings. Inflation remains a concern, currently at 3.6%. Driven by higher food prices and air rail travel costs. While a cooling employment market may eventually contribute to inflation reduction, the bank's decision indicates a cautious approach. The bank acknowledges a challenging economic landscape, with sluggish wage growth and a tighter jobs market. The bank's actions aim to encourage spending and investment, but the risks include further inflationary pressures. HSBC's Liz Martin's forecasts borrowing costs to fall to 3% by the latter part of 2026. Though she emphasizes the bank's likely cautious approach. The Office for National Statistics will release data on the UK economy between April and June next week, which will be crucial for assessing the economy's performance. Future interest rate cuts are expected, but the pace of these reductions remains uncertain. The bank's decisions are heavily influenced by inflation data and the evolving economic climate. UK launches one-in, one-out return deal with France. The United Kingdom has initiated a new strategy to combat illegal channel crossings with the implementation of a one-in, one-out agreement with France. This pilot scheme, set to run until June 2026, aims to curb record levels of irregular migration by facilitating the return of individuals arriving via small boats in exchange for accepting a corresponding number of French nationals seeking asylum. Beginning on Wednesday, the Home Office, under Secretary of State Yvette Cooper, commenced detaining migrants who arrived on small boats. These individuals will be held in immigration removal centers pending their removal to France. The government anticipates these returns will begin within the coming weeks. The scheme operates on a reciprocal basis. For every individual returned to France, the UK will accept a French national who has successfully navigated a rigorous application process. Potential applicants must upload identity documents, undergo security checks, and pass biometric controls. Approved individuals will be granted a 3-month window in the UK to claim asylum or apply for a visa, subject to the same restrictions applied to other asylum seekers, including limitations on employment, education, and benefits. Prime Minister Keir Starmer emphasized the government's commitment to securing borders, stating, "If you break the law to enter this country, you will face being sent back. When I say I will stop at nothing to secure our borders, I mean it." The Home Office will refer detainee cases to French authorities within 3 days, with a 14-day response expected. The UK government will cover all costs associated with the return process. Unaccompanied minors are excluded from this deportation scheme. The launch of the reciprocal application process for French nationals seeking entry into the UK also commenced on Thursday. The scheme is intended to disrupt the business model of criminal gangs involved in facilitating channel crossings. Refugee charities have voiced concerns, urging the government to prioritize safe and legal routes for asylum seekers. As of the end of July, over 25,000 migrants had crossed the channel in small boats, representing a significant increase compared to the same period in 2024. Recent demonstrations outside hotels housing asylum seekers have highlighted the ongoing tensions surrounding this issue. UK grapples with Chinese investment and steel industry challenges. The United Kingdom is currently navigating complex negotiations with Chinese investors regarding both a proposed mega embassy in London and the future of British Steel. A primary concern revolves around the Chinese owners of British Steel, Jinyi, who are demanding hundreds of millions in taxpayer money to finalize the acquisition of the company. This demand has stalled the search for a new commercial partner and prompted a standoff with Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds. Jinyi initially valued British Steel at hundreds of millions, while the government, having taken control in April, believes the company is effectively worth nothing. Negotiations have been fraught with disagreement over valuation, with Jinyi previously rejecting a $500 million offer. Simultaneously, the UK government is engaged in a separate dispute with China concerning a planned mega embassy near the Tower of London. Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner has requested a 2-week response from Beijing to explain redacted sections of the embassy's planning documents, raising security concerns and suspicions of potential espionage. The Chinese government's application for the embassy has been repeatedly rejected and resubmitted, highlighting tensions between the two nations. The government has been utilizing funds from the $2.5 billion Steel Fund to maintain operations at the Scunthorpe blast furnaces since taking control of British Steel. However, this approach is viewed as a temporary solution, and the government remains determined to find a permanent commercial partner. Despite Jinyi's demands, negotiations remain unresolved, with a senior government source suggesting the government may ultimately need to force a full nationalization through Parliament as a last resort. The situation is further complicated by differing valuations of British Steel, with the government wary of Jinyi's substantial financial expectations. Both the embassy project and the future of British Steel represent significant challenges for the UK government, demanding careful diplomatic and economic management. The government's actions underscore a broader strategy to address security concerns and safeguard critical industries amid evolving international relations. The impasse regarding British Steel's ownership is directly impacting the progress of the embassy project, demonstrating the interconnectedness of these strategic issues. The global pursuit of net zero UK progress and international commitments, and the concept of net zero, a balancing greenhouse gas emissions with removal, is a globally significant target aimed at mitigating climate change. Achieving this requires reducing emissions through a shift away from fossil fuels towards cleaner energy sources like wind and solar, alongside investments in technologies such as electric vehicles and carbon capture. The UK has committed to net zero by 2050, a target enshrined in law, but faces political challenges and is currently off track, according to the Climate Change Committee. While UK emissions have fallen significantly since 1990, progress is hampered by differing political viewpoints, with some parties advocating for scrapping the 2050 deadline. Internationally, numerous countries have pledged net zero targets. China, the world's largest emitter, aims for carbon neutrality by 2060, though its plans are still developing. The United States, historically the largest emitter, has fluctuated in its commitment, with previous pledges rolled back. The European Union, including Germany's target of 2045, has made substantial emissions reductions. Russia and India have set targets for 2060 and 2070, respectively. Approximately 140 countries, representing over 80% of the world's population excluding the US, have adopted net zero goals. The overall cost of achieving net zero is estimated to be around 0.2% of the UK's GDP per year until 2050, primarily driven by upfront investment in clean technologies. Despite the challenges, numerous studies demonstrate that the economic consequences of inaction on climate change far outweigh the costs of transitioning to a net zero economy. The transition is expected to create new jobs in the clean energy sector, while potentially negatively impacting those employed in the fossil fuel industry. The global effort towards net zero is a complex undertaking, requiring coordinated action from governments, businesses, and individuals. Homelessness ministers' rent hike sparks resignation calls. The recent revelation that Rushanara Ali, Britain's homelessness minister, increased the rent on a property she owns by $700 within weeks of removing previous tenants has triggered significant controversy and calls for her resignation. The iPaper reported that 4 tenants were given 4 months' notice to vacate a house in East London, which was subsequently relisted at a higher rate. Ali's actions are particularly damaging given her ministerial role. A spokesperson for Ali stated she complied with all legal requirements, citing a fixed-term contract and the property's sale as factors. However, sources indicate the property was initially listed for sale while the tenants resided there, with the intention of a rolling contract until a sale occurred. Campaign group Generation Rent, led by Ben Twomey, labeled the allegations shocking, emphasizing the need for stronger renter protections. The controversy highlights concerns about potential conflicts of interest and the vulnerability of renters. Conservative MP Ben Obese-Jekti strongly urged Ali's resignation. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper acknowledged the situation, but offered limited comment, stating she was unaware of the specific details. The situation coincides with the final stages of the Renters' Rights Bill, designed to address issues within the private rental sector. The bill proposes banning landlords from relisting properties to sell after ending a tenancy, requiring a 6-month restriction. It also aims to abolish fixed-term tenancies and mandates a minimum 4-month notice period for regaining possession to sell. Currently, the majority of England's 4.6 million privately rented homes utilize assured short-hold tenancies, often with fixed terms or rolling contracts. Landlords currently employ 2 primary eviction methods: Section 8, based on reasons such as late rent, and Section 21, a no-fault eviction. Ministry of Justice statistics reveal a 6% decrease in no-fault evictions during the first 3 months of 2025 compared to the same period in 2024, with 7,353 evictions recorded. The proposed Renters' Rights Bill seeks to mitigate the risks associated with these eviction methods and provide greater security for renters.